I'm very happy to introduce a very special guest for me today. Dr. Mona Delahooke has more than 30 years experience helping parents and families of children with behavioral, emotional, and learning differences. I've read your book, Beyond Behaviors. It helped me understand so much about my parenting style and the way I look at behavior. So, Dr. Mona, could you tell us more about your journey and what brought you into helping families?
Oh, sure, Donna, and thank you so much for having me on. It's really wonderful to meet you. My journey began many years ago, decades ago. I always wanted to be a psychologist, so I was interested in mental health. So very early on, I became a psychologist, got my doctorate in psychology, and practiced for about a decade. When I came upon some, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And then I had my own children after that. And then it I realized something was kind of missing in my training. And that was early development, like how humans develop. Social and emotional development isn't usually covered in a graduate degree in psychology, believe it or not. That is more in a subspecialty. And people like occupational therapists and physical therapists oftentimes know more about development than mental health folks. So long story short, I decided to specialize in development. And so I took about 5 years off. That's when I had training in DIR, a couple certificates in infant mental health. And 5 years later, I reopened my practice with a focus on prevention, number one, and got into the world of neurodiversity, seeing a lot of children who were diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and then became very interested in behavioral challenges. And so that became a subspecialty. And then I just loved it, and I've been working, and I finally wrote a couple books, and those are apparently helping a lot of people. So it's just a journey of discovery.
And can you tell us more about the polyvagal theory and what's so revolutionary about it?
Yes. So I was so lucky. About 25 years ago,
Oh.
I know, isn't it crazy? I still can't believe it. That went that quickly, but yeah, so enjoy your every day of your life. But anyway, about 25 years ago, my friend and colleague had twins that were, one of them had difficulty. He had growth retardation in utero. So she is a trailblazer, Connie Lillis, and she had a consult with a scientist named Dr. Stephen Porges. I had never heard of him before that, but she told me that this is a researcher who is researching the autonomic nervous system. And her little boy, her baby twin, was having difficulty regulating his physiology, regulating his state. And he needed to gain weight, and he was crying and fussing. And she was an infant mental health specialist, but she couldn't help him. So she studied the polyvagal theory, and I did as well because we were in a study group together. And I got to know the underlying physiology of stress in the human body. And once I did that, so that's what the polyvagal theory really is. It's a theory of the evolutionary history of how human beings manage being human, right? Being safe, feeling safe, keeping your body and brain working has to do with our subconscious processes. And guess what? This was not taught in my training. And so once I added the subconscious process to my work with children, oh my gosh, they got better quicker. Parents were happier. Everyone felt more hope and compassion. And it just took off as a new way of looking at how we can help families.
And how does actually floor time principle tie up with the polyvagal theory?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. That's a great question because, again, around 25 or 30, maybe over 30 years ago, two pioneers in the infant mental health field, Dr. Serena Weider, who's my mentor, and Dr. Stanley Greenspan, whom I also had the privilege of meeting many times, developed a theory which is known as the DIR theory, developmental, individual differences and relationship based, which tied together development with individual differences. And again, I found DIR because I was in two infant mental health specialization programs. And DIR, unfortunately, I think got pegged as either infant mental health or autism treatment. It didn't really go into general psychology, and that's what I'm hoping to, introduce the world to these two people, because they really changed the way we view early intervention, support for children, helping a child if they seem to have their development is challenged. So this DIR theory is very central to my work. And I think what I have added in Beyond Behaviors approach is more on the autonomic nervous system. So I go specifically into the 3 states of the nervous system as a more precise guide. DIR talks about regulation regulation and attention, which is amazing. But I think I give some more specifics, and I added this polyvagal theory to that, along with a very deep respect for getting to know each child. And but I love the floor time approach, and the other thing I love about it so much is that it's strength based. It's not deficit based. No. It's strength based, and that's where we need to go. Right now, you go to some places in the world, you go to early intervention, and you're told all the things that are wrong with your child's development, or all the things they're not doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, floor time helped me be a better parent. At the beginning, I didn't know how to connect with my child. I bought what my friends bought, all kinds of flashy toys, and it just didn't work for me, and I didn't know how to connect with my child. So
oh, that is so beautiful. So it helped you connect in a new way, or in a different way, a more intimate way?
It helped me connect in all ways, because my boy, who had sensory difficulties, would just be fascinated on a flashy toy and just press it and press it. And that I was a young parent, and that was I thought I should do, but it was of course wrong. So
that's amazing. How did you find the floor time approach? How did you come about it?
Someone recommended it to me, and I just started working with a therapist, and it just changed our lives. And
that's so great. Wow.
And what would you say the risk of ignoring the child's need when he or she are in the blue path?
Yeah, so in the blue pathway, there is starting to be a very serious sense of disconnection from others. And it's a more desperate nervous system state than even the fight or flight nervous system, which is the sympathetic nervous system, where a child is yelling and angry, or an adult, right? Activated and upset. At least that one is mobilizing, right? It's mobilizing against threat, and it's trying to feel safe again, trying to feel calm. In the blue pathway, where we have behaviors that are shut down, the child or the adult is not having any engagement with humans. They don't want to. They are blue. It might look like depression. It's very significantly, it takes up a lot of energy of your system to be that checked out. It's very serious. So the opposite of what we want to do is ignore the child. What we want to do is engage the social engagement system, which I call the green pathway because it's easier to remember than ventral vagal. But we want to have social engagement help the child feel hopeful again. And so we don't want to ignore, we really want to have interactions that are specifically customized to that particular child's nervous system. So there's no one way to engage a child. It's really what works with that child's multiple sensory systems.
Mm-hmm. And what would be the differences between the bottom-up approaches?
Yes. So most parents don't really know, and some professionals aren't really aware of these categories. So we can think of the categories or the context that we have bottom up and top down interventions. So what would be an example of a top down intervention? A top down intervention is talking to a child, reasoning with a child, showing a child flashcards, basically where we are using using our language and trying to engage the child in a thoughtful conversation. That is a top-down approach. And when children are ready for it, it's amazing. It's the foundation of mental health. We talk about what our feelings and what's going on inside. It's fantastic. However, many children and many adults aren't yet able to talk about or symbolize their emotions, their feelings. And we assume they are, and which also means we're assuming that they can control their emotions and behaviors. And many children can't. It's a developmental process. So it's called the expectation gap. We expect more than children can give us. And what they really need first is a bottom-up approach. And so an example of a bottom-up approach would be maybe some of the things they do, you can do on a playground, swinging a child, playing with a child, hugging a child. It doesn't involve their reasoning with their upper part of their brain. It involves being with their body. It might be a massage. It might be doing some wonderful breathing together or listening to music. So that is going through different portals. It's not the cognitive portal, but the portal of the body. Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot of sense. For example, we've been working a lot on the foundation, like primitive reflexes, and working on that kind of intervention in order to get to higher levels of cognition.
That's fantastic. And that's the basis, again, of DIR and Floortime. It's you work on these foundational levels, such as primitive reflexes, that help build the structure for the child's future social and emotional development.
Exactly. And what about sense of safety versus threat? How to make a child feel safe in their own environment?
Yes, and it sounds simple, right? It's like, well, my child is safe. They know they're safe, and they are in a good classroom with a good teacher, or they know they're home at safe with me and their family. But we're really not talking about generic safety. I'm talking about the subjective perception of safety. And that's quite different than being in a safe place. So it's very individually processed. So here's an example of a child being in a classroom that is a great classroom, great teacher, it's a safe school, etc. But they are having these red zone behaviors. They are throwing things off their desk or hitting their peers.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody knows why. Everyone's thinking, well, this is a safe place. It's a good teacher. But unbeknownst to everybody, the child has multiple sensory processing overreactivities that is causing his nervous system or her nervous system to not feel safe. And that's called experiencing the neuroception of threat. It's subconscious, and so it's invisible. And in my book, Beyond Behaviors, I describe these sources as the hidden part of the iceberg underneath the waterline, that it's invisible. You can't see it. So you have to go digging, you have to go swimming underneath there and find out, why is this child having stress behaviors that are caused by the nervous system not feeling safe, not the brain by itself, but the whole body not feeling safe.
Exactly. And how can we change the way the parents look at the child's behavior in a different light, other than good or bad?
Oh, and well, first of all, let's acknowledge that throughout the world, we think of behaviors as good or bad, compliant or non-compliant, preferred or non-preferred. Let's just say compassionately, that's how I was raised. And for many years, that's how I raised my own children. It was like, I'm going to focus on the behavior and make sure that they have good behaviors. So if for any parents who are listening, please, this is a no blame, no shame. We're all in this together. And in our cultural DNA, we really look at behaviors as either good or bad. But the story is much more complicated than that. And what I have found over 30 years of clinical work and in the research that I've done that supports this from a theoretical perspective, from the Polyvagal Theory and from the theory of constructed emotions and other scientific theories, is that behaviors are either safety-based or threat-based. And if a child is having what we would think of as bad behaviors, air quote on bad, it's really a signal, and especially if they're persistent, if these are really happening a lot and they're very severe, this is a signal of a threat-based behavior, not an intentional bad behavior. The child's not trying to be bad or to get something. The child is experiencing stress in their body. And it's a whole new way of looking at behaviors. We call it a paradigm shift or a lens shift, like you shift the lens of the camera.
And how can parents help older children to get to higher emotional stages?
Well, the best way to help your child move up to these higher emotional stages where they can talk to you about their feelings. I mean, isn't this kind of what we want as our children get older and turn into teenagers and adults, that they can come to us and say, Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you about something. I have a problem. That is the highest compliment to a parent, right? Because you will be there for them. You are their safe harbor. What can you do? Well, focus on the relationship first. Focus on joyful interactions, starting from whenever you can. If your child is 10, that's fine. Start at 10. If they're 15, start there. If they're newborn, start there. The window never closes to build a strong relationship with your child. So I'd have to say in the DIR, community, we really believe that play is the foundation of healthy development across the lifespan. So play as much as possible according to your child's interest and your own interest, because you want to have fun too. And prioritize these kind of interactions that in DIR speak is known as back and forth. Think of it as a tennis game. The child does something, you do something. Child does something, you do something back. And tennis or ping pong is such a fun game. You just do it with your communication with each other, and it usually leads to social problem solving and to play. Joy leads the way. And as simple as it sounds, it's kind of hard, especially this past year and a half for our world. Oh my gosh, I just feel even kind of guilty mentioning that we should be joyful, because I am aware of how many people are still suffering. And if you are still suffering, if you're listening to this and you're still suffering, my heart goes out to you. And if there's not enough energy to play with your child, that's okay too. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just accept yourself where you're at. Have a lot of self-compassion and get through the day by day. Hopefully things will start to improve for our world.
And my last question would be, how would you recommend for parents when the child is in a stress response, fight or flight? What should they do?
Yes. So when they are in that state that we all dread, screaming, calling you names, almost maybe hitting you, it's very painful, right? It's, as a parent, it's very distressing. So what do? The first thing we can do is remember that it's not about you, it's about the child's nervous system. So that might help you not to try to not take it as personally as it feels, because it feels, believe me, I know it feels like such an injury. But remember that the child is in a stressed state and that it's a stress behavior. And the best thing you can do is stay calm yourself. So do whatever you need to do to stay calm. If that means making sure the child is safe and then taking a few moments away, if it's possible, right? Taking a deep breath, getting a glass of water, going to the bathroom, whatever, if you can, of course, keeping the child safe. Take a moment, be calm, and then figure out the best way to calm your child's nervous system so that they can come back and problem solve with you again. And that for some children, that might mean not saying anything at all, but just letting them know you're here, you're witnessing their suffering. Mm-hmm. And you, with your body language, you just like show them, honey, I see you. I'm sorry you're in pain. How can I help? And on an individual basis. So I talk about how to create, spreadsheets and all that in the book, because it's a little complicated. You have to know your child. It's not a one size fits all, but the main pathway is staying calm yourself and then helping calm your child's nervous system when they're in the red activated state.
And where can people find your book, your website?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so my website is monadelahooke.com, and my book, Beyond Behaviors, is available in the UK at Amazon UK and bookstores. It's published by Hachette UK. And yeah, I think it's been translated, or in the process of being translated, into about 6 languages. So I'm very grateful for the response. It seems to be giving parents hope.
Yeah, it should be. Also, I mean, there's an audio version, which also is
great. There's an audio version, and it's long. But yes. If you use it in the car, you can use a week of errands and listen to it in the car.
Yeah. And do you offer any courses online or?
Yes, I have one course right now. It's a continuing education course for providers, but also for parents. It kind of outlines the basic ideas of Beyond Behaviors. And you can find that link on my website, or I'm happy to provide it to anyone who's interested. And I just recorded a second how-to kind of masterclass, and in it I have role plays, and I show how to do it. That'll be released, I believe, in October.
Ah, great. It will be a great resource. Dr. Mona, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure and a dream come true for me.
Oh, it is a joy to know you, and thank you so much for having me on.